Are live.
Live. All right, let me let these folks in here. And my name. All right.
Right. Welcome to the Q&A, everybody. What's cooking, Rhino?
Oh, not a lot. Been reading your emails this week. It was kind of the theme of the week was guys and gals, of course, who are kind of having a hard time getting started. So I thought that was a pretty good topic. This is kind of that time of the year. I was talking to one of my buddies, and he's like, "Hey, how's business?" I'm like, "Well, it's actually going pretty well now that the golf season's kind of winding down. Guys are starting to really think more about their physical fitness, and then, since they're not spending their time on the course, they're gonna spend their time in the gym." And then we've also got the Thanksgiving coming up, and Christmas, and New Year's, and a bunch of fat holidays coming up.
The big cycle, the big push.
The
at
big
the end
push
of the year.
to gain a bunch of weight.
I get the question a lot, like after golf season ends, and people ask me, "Oh, is business slowing down?" I'm like, "No, actually, this is when it gets busy, because this is when people are starting to come back inside. They don't have the golf clubs in their hand quite so much, and they're ready to start doing some of the work. But like you said, typically around end of the year is when people start to realize, like, oh man, I've just had Christmas, I've just had Thanksgiving, and all, even just Halloween last week. It's like, oh man, I got to get back on track." So that definitely kind of ramps things up a little bit. But right now is the time when golfers need to realize, like, hey, as you're putting your clubs away, yeah, give that a little bit of a break. But this is where you can really make some big strides for next year for whatever you want to do out on the course, because you can get your body moving a little bit more. You can fix some of the injuries that maybe have come up. So this is definitely the time to take advantage of that for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And then January 1, good God, then it all hits the fan because everybody panics. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And a big part of, and we can talk about this as some more of these folks get in here, about how like one of the big pitfalls you talked about, and we talk about this all the time, is like too much too fast. Like start slow, and this is a marathon, not a sprint. You're not going to be on the cover of Men's Health in 90 days, despite what the fitness industry will have you believe.
Yeah, it's really easy to jump in and go full bore, and then like a week into it, either you realize, like, whoa, I'm super sore, or I just don't have time to kind of keep this pace up. That happens a lot. Like you go gun ho and you figure out that first week, and you squeeze in all these workouts, and you're doing all this stuff, and you're eating great. And then it's like that next weekend hits and you're like, man, that was exhausting. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that again. And then rather than just then squeezing it in and being, kind of figuring out what your calendar looks like and putting it in the right places, it's kind of like, just kind of wash my hands of it, so it's either kind of an all or none. And I'm guilty of that with many things. It's like all in or all out, and it's a slippery slope. But that's where, yeah, if you start out just gun ho, guns a blazing, and you don't have a plan for that to be a longer term thing, then yeah, you're kind of setting yourself up for either complete exhaustion and then just hating your life and just grinding through the whole process, or many times just F it, this isn't worth it. Then you start to go through those questions, like, why am I doing this? Is it worth it? And at that point, because you're so miserable and you're maybe in pain and things, you think to yourself, like, no, it's not worth it. And you forget why you even started the whole process, or you waver on like that balancing. There was a scale of, should I stick this out or shouldn't I? And if you don't really have that big reason behind it, then most times you end up kind of kicking it off your plate.
Yeah, and that's like the self-help industry it's always booming because they get you so motivated. And then like the infomercials, like, I mean, you and I have bought P90X, Insanity, and all these other ones because we get pretty jazzed up at 2:00 in the morning when we see the commercials. And then as soon as that like motivation wears off and you realize, good God, these workouts suck. I mean, they're just not fun. And they're fun for some people, just not most people.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the thing is, and again, we always preach, just do something that you like. If you don't like lifting weights, go do something else. Get on the rowing machine. That can be fun. Watch a movie while you're doing that. There are plenty of alternatives.
Or have that reason behind it. And obviously for most people that are in our crew that are on this call, that reason behind it is going to be, in some way related to their golf. In some way, they have that bigger reason, like this is going to help me achieve XYZ on the golf course, or in my fitness level that I know is going to help me with my performance on the golf course, or just general daily life. It's going to help me look better, feel better, mentally have more clarity. And so having that reason behind just doing the exercises, if you're just doing it like, okay, I want to look better. In fact, I got an email this past week about, or maybe it was the end of last week, about an email that we sent out talking about the process and, sticking with it and not necessarily having like one specific goal that you're so attached to. We've had this conversation, not always focusing on just that results-based goal, but I think his name was Nick who sent me the email. He said, hey, for me, it's actually worked to have some sort of a results-based goal to strive towards. And that has helped me then with then stick to the process because he had something in mind. And it might've been, it doesn't always have to be, like 10% body fat or something like that, but having something like, that's my goal, that's my target. But then in order to reach my target, that keeps me engaged in this process, as opposed to having something that's a little bit more, less concrete, where it's like, I just want to look better. Well, what does that really mean? And right. if you leave it up to be that, bland, then it's kind of like, well, then it makes you less likely to stick to your workout program or even come up with a workout program. That could be, you could be sitting there thinking, well, I'll just go to the gym and I'll kind of make up my workout because that'll help me look better. But if you don't have targets, because I know that when I have a target of, going all in on the diet or that kind of thing, it's not necessarily typically based around a specific number of, weight or body fat or performance or something like that. But I know I make that decision to go all in, then it's like, okay, I've got it mapped out. This is the workouts I'm doing. This is the diet that I'm sticking to. These are the habits that I'm sticking to. And so I thought that was a good refresher when he sent that email, just that, if you do have a little bit of that light at the end of the tunnel, or that carrot at the end of the stick, that forces you into that process a little bit more.
Yeah. I see exactly what he's saying. And then you actually just buy in to the process, especially when you do something where you get like some quick wins. Like the daily motion is a perfect example. After 7 days, you feel way, way, way better. Which,
yeah,
if we, it seems easy. Like if we were in some sort of other business where you can just flip a switch and then you get a quick win. But like we talk about this, like, oh, just trust us. I swear this works.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's just shut this 18 strong thing down. Find something easier. Which is simpler. That's the worst thing. Actually, I was listening to that podcast with Rob Deerdick, and he was saying, if you ever hear those words that's why I was on the top of my head. If you ever hear those words out of somebody's mouth and they want to partner with you on a business venture because your industry is easier, run for the hills, because none of it's easy.
Yeah. And hey guys, just a reminder for everybody that's on the call, if you have a question, we've got some in the queue that I know Ryan's going to pull up, and I've got a couple here, but if you have a question that you want to throw in there, just throw it in the chat box and we'll make sure that we get to it. So we've got the what is it? Down in Mayakoba, the Worldwide Technology is sponsoring the golf championship down there. Which, for those of you that are on the line, Worldwide Technology is actually a St. Louis-based company, which is pretty cool to see, like one of our biggest companies from St. Louis now kind of diving in and becoming more of a name in the world of golf and sponsorships and stuff. And what's really kind of neat is Ryan and I know several guys that are really kind of at the top of the Worldwide Technology executive chain, and a lot of them played soccer for my grandpa at St. Louis University. And so it was kind of funny. I got a text message from Adam Long a couple of days ago, And Ryan, you already know this because I then sent you a note to see what the name of the one guy was. But Adam Long was like, "Hey, what's the name of, are any of the guys from Worldwide? Do you know any of them? Because I think they're a bunch of SLU guys, St. Louis University, that is." And I'm like, "Yeah, we know all kinds of these guys. My dad played soccer with them, but they all just mentioned Grandpa Val. They all loved Grandpa Val."
Oh yeah.
It's kind of cool that all that company is really kind of built by SLU soccer players for the most part.
Oh, for sure.
So
Yeah, that did the whole thing. And I remember even back when I was in college in the late 90s, like if you played soccer at SLU, you almost immediately had a job at Worldwide.
mm-hmm.
I think they have like 4,000 people worldwide in the business. So it's like quietly become a really big thing around St. Louis, and everybody seems to like to work there.
Yeah.
And it only took me, I don't know, 15 years to figure out what they actually do.
Yeah, I'm still not totally sure. Something technology based, but what's neat is, and I had seen their logo on Graham McDowell's shirt for a while now, for the last several years. But now they sponsored this. They sponsored the thing at Eastlake a week or two ago for all the collegiate players. So I hinted at Adam. I'm like, "Hey, any chance we're going to see a Worldwide Technology on the sleeve of your shirt?" And he didn't really give me a straight answer. So maybe there is something brewing, but we shall see. But that'd be pretty cool for them to have, a local guy that's, representing their brand and is becoming a big brand out on the tour.
Oh yeah, get the link sole on one sleeve and Worldwide on the other.
Yeah, not too shabby.
That's a good look for anybody.
Yeah. So another couple cool things that happened this past week before we dive into some questions, unless anybody has one that's on the tip of their tongue. I just interviewed today a guy by the name of Wes Patterson, who he's a world long drive guy. Made it to, I think he made it to the quarterfinals this year. But it was cool talking to him about Bryson DeChambeau jumping into, we've talked about Bryson a couple times in the last few weeks, about Bryson jumping in and doing the world long drive. And I kind of asked him, first of all, what was your impression when he was coming in? Did you think he was going to be a bit of a joke? Did you think he was going to do really well? And he basically said, "Man, I had to eat a little bit of crow, and now I'm a Bryson fan." He said, "I thought, he was going to show up and pretty much, not really going to be able to compete, but the skill level that Bryson brought out there, like he said, he was like analyzing the conditions of the long drive, like the weather and things like that. And most of these guys are hitting like these big flailing bombs, and Bryson's hitting these like piercing bullets that are rolling out and getting them all this distance. And he's like, just seeing the way that he approached it tactically and strategically was really, really cool. And he's like, I can't say enough good things about Bryson and what he did for the long drive, because I didn't realize that the Golf Channel pulled the long drive this year because their golf channel's trying to sell. So they're trying to sell that. So they held the events. So the event that was put on was basically self-funded by a small handful of guys, I think through the Professional Long Drive Association, or I forget what the actual group was. But so Wes was telling me like, yeah, that event wouldn't have happened without these other guys. And then Bryson coming in brought so many eyeballs in a good way that it really helped all those guys out too. So that was pretty cool.
That's nice. And I'd assume that his accuracy is way off the charts. I didn't watch it. That his ability hit him way straighter than those guys.
Yeah. In fact, Wes was like, yeah, it kind of sucked because I used to be able to like use that excuse. Like, I don't hit it that straight, but I hit it super far. He's like, well, but Bryson's out there pumping it 390 and hitting it like on a string. So it's like, I guess I just got to get better. I just got to get straighter. But so, yeah, it was kind of cool to hear how much appreciation he had for first the work that Bryson put in to create the speed that he does. He's like, the dude is fast. He's super fast. And then also the technical piece that, kind of took him over the edge to allow him to get to the level that he he did. So.
All right. Well, I'm slowly creeping into being a DeChambeau fan. I'm not quite there yet.
I know. I think my scales have tipped more towards the DeChambeau side than the Koepka side. So and
Yeah,
I was such a Koepka fan early on when he was back in the days when he was working with David Donatucci and he was kind of a skinny up and coming guy. But yeah, I don't know. I'm starting to teeter the other way a little bit.
He's winning you over. Well, that was the whole thing, because most people don't like DeChambeau. That makes me want to like him.
All right. Yeah.
And then he still makes it so hard.
Well, when you listen to the interview with Wes, he had a lot of good things to say, and about stuff that Bryson off the course, you know, like texting Wes, like, hey, you know, how can I help you out? You know, what can I do to, because Wes is involved in a couple charities, and he's like, man, if I can get down to that charity event to support you and be there, if that would help out, I'll try to get there. And so just some cool behind the scenes stuff. It was awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then also an interview that's will be available this afternoon on iTunes and everything, is with Chris Harder, Hayden Buckley's golf coach.
Oh yeah.
Which this is the first time that Chris and I have ever really had a chance to sit and chat. We've texted back and forth a little bit. He's worked with Hayden since he was 12 years old. And so it was cool to talk to him about, you know, like, all right, what were your expectations of this kid? And, you know, he didn't really think that Hayden was going to even play in college. Not many people thought that he was going to go into college and play, or if he did, he wasn't going to, you know, do a whole lot there. And then just slowly but surely started seeing him get better and better and better. And he's like, now I honestly believe he's one of the best ball strikers in the world, top 50 ball strikers in the world for sure.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a fun interview. A lot of good chats about our boy, which
Excellent.
hopefully he does pretty well. I haven't checked any scores today. I don't know who's playing when.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it yet either. Yeah, so I guess Hayden's just more of a little bit of a later bloomer than a lot of those guys.
Well, you know, it's funny because he's later bloomer into the competitive space of like collegiate level, but
right
on a pretty fast pace as far as getting into the PGA Tour and starting to make some dollars out there. So it's interesting. I mean, you know, like it'd be like a quick spike from where he was, you know, high school level. People didn't really think he was going to go really far. And then all of a sudden 2 years out, you know, like there's so many guys that are still out there 10 years later trying to battle it out on the mini tours to get status on the Korn Ferry Tour. And here he is, you know, 2 years he is jumped out onto the PGA Tour.
Yeah, because he went from he got to Mizzou. So you're 18 or 19 when you get to college. What do you have, like a 2% scholarship or some non-existent number?
Basically non-existent.
Then he turns into, you know, the all-time, you know, leading scorer at Mizzou, which is not a huge golf school, but still. And then 2 years after that, now he's
PGA Tour
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part's meteoric. But yeah, from the I don't know. Maybe he stuck when he was 12 and all of a sudden he got better. You never know. Like the way these kids grow. Like I see it when we're coaching our boys and girls in soccer. It's like, what the hell's going on with this kid for 3 months? And then all of a sudden, boom, they're like a stud again. It's really.
Yeah, that's when their bodies are changing. And, you know, it's all of a sudden neurologically, like their body isn't coordinated anymore for a little bit. And then it kind of catches up. The body catches up. And then it's really fascinating. I was talking to a guy at my son's soccer practice yesterday, my son Grant, so the 8-year-old, and we were just talking about how, you know, it's hard with sports these days, like how some coaches haven't adapted and some like teams haven't adapted to almost like the new way that kids are now, you know, like attention spans are way less than when we were younger, and you can't, you know, it's almost like you have to entertain them a little bit in order for them to kind of learn the sport. You can't just like teach them specific, like this is the sport. Like you almost have to trick them into learning the sport a little bit.
Right.
At least for the kids that aren't like the hard-nosed ones, you know, like at the age of 8, you throw these kids out on a field and there's going to be 3-4 kids maybe that are, you know, going hard for the ball and they've got skills and things like that. and then the other kids are like picking daisies or whatever. But you don't want to discourage those kids from, being interested in the game. So you want to try to not weed them out yet, because those kids, in 2 years, when they start to develop and they start to gain some of these physical skills, they could end up being a pretty darn good player. I mean, I both know soccer players that, didn't really do a whole lot, maybe as we're in grade school, but then all of a sudden they kind of come into their own, they hit puberty, they're stronger, they're faster. And now all of a sudden they're playing Division I soccer and beyond. So it was just an interesting conversation. I hadn't really thought about it like that, like sometimes you got to try to hold that kid in there, or at least not discourage him from being in that. And this parent was saying, unfortunately, that's kind of what's happening with his son in hockey is, the coaches are really hard nosed, and they're like, this is how it is. And his kid's like, Dad, I don't want to go to practice. I hate it. And it's like, oh, come on, just stick it out a little bit, like, because the kid's talented too, and the dad, he's like, I don't know if I'm pressuring him because I played hockey, but, I'd hate to see him get sour on the game at this young and then never want to play it later on. So,
yeah, I think that's a lot of that's on the coach. I mean, all these
totally
they're supposed to be fun, golf included. I know we like do that to ourselves, even, I'm 45. And there are times like, oh, this sucks. I'm playing horrible. I'm like, then I have to take a step back. Like, this is supposed to be fun. And for kids to be burned out at that age is just not even burned out necessarily. Well, that too, that's a whole separate thing. But to not enjoy such a fun thing to do with your buddies, that's grow up, coaches.
Yeah, it stinks.
I guess we're just awesome coaches.
We're the best. We are the best. All right, let me pull up this question that I got this week from John. Let's see. So John said, so we were kind of talking all week in the emails about, kind of getting started and kind of overcoming that inertia kind of mentality. But his question was, quick question regarding delayed onset muscle fatigue, DOMS. When performing a new exercise, I complete the routine without much trouble. However, about 48 hours later, delayed onset muscle fatigue is almost debilitating. So 3 or 4 days will pass without significant relief. After that, the soreness passes, and then perform the exercises, when you're doing your next rounds of workouts, isn't necessarily a problem. So he was asking, what is it, if anything, that he can do to prevent that muscle soreness, I should say. I kept saying fatigue. Sorry. Delayed onset muscle soreness initially. I understand hydration, stretching, and massage can help. Do you believe in supplements such as BCAAs? So I have my thoughts on this, but I also looked up a couple things today too. I do believe in BCAAs, branched chain amino acids. I have recommended those to people the last several years, and really most of the post-workout shakes that you're going to find, like a good quality post-workout protein shake, high protein shake, like a whey isolate or whatever, is typically going to have, it's going to say that it has BCAAs in it. And so I would look for that if you're doing a post-workout shake. That's one way to kind of help combat that a little bit. Hydration is a big one. Just making sure that your muscles have the right fuel in them, have electrolytes in them, things like that. He mentioned massage. So interestingly enough, I do think that there's value to massage, like, maybe post-workout or post-training or whatever, but obviously it's not that easy for you to go and get a massage every time after you work out for the first time, right? We have these percussive units like the Theraguns and stuff like that. And those things they can help. I think that they more help with the soreness at the time that you're doing it, though. I don't know how much it really impacts the long-term effect of it. So what I would do is the best thing that you can do is basically get your body moving, because again, blood flow to the muscles is going to help flush out some of the things that are happening with your muscles. When you have, when you're getting that soreness, it's more the micro tears, kind of tearing up the muscles, the little micro tears in the muscles that end up happening. So then the inflammatory response occurs, and your body's sending in chemicals to clean that up. And so there's different thought processes in what actually is creating the pain, but that's really what's going on, is it's from the micro tears in there. And so the more that you can get the blood flowing, the muscles moving, the more you're going to kind of help pump that stuff around. Just like we've talked about any injury or whatever, the more you can get the blood moving, the more the muscles can help flush that out, is going to be a good thing. So doing even like some light movement after your workout, so like almost like you would do a dynamic warm up before your workout, doing even just some simple dynamic stretches after your workout can actually help with that. Static stretching isn't going to do quite as much. It can help a little bit, but doing that, doing like some dynamic movements, or even just going for a walk after your workout, something like that. Or let's say on that day that you are really sore, if it's 2 days later, again, the best thing that you can do is move. So going for a walk, doing like a light little stretching program or mobility program is again going to help get those muscles moving and pumping that stuff into your lymphatic system and moving it out. So heat again can help out a little bit with that kind of stuff. Icing is probably not really going to help. I mean, it will help at the time, but it won't necessarily help with the flushing, unless, and we've been talking about this the last couple of weeks. And I used to do this after soccer, when we had like some brutal 3-a-day training sessions in college, like tryouts. We would do ice immersions, ice baths, and I didn't understand why we were doing it. They just told us to do it, but it definitely seemed to help with the soreness the next day or the next couple of days. And I feel like it probably is due to that whole response that we talked about last time with ice baths, of when you submerge yourself in ice, your body thinks it's freezing to death, so it shunts all your blood to your core. And this is kind of the thought process behind that cryotherapy too, is it slows down the blood supply out to your extremities. It shunts it and holds it towards your organs. And then once you get out and you get back into the warmth, then it pushes all that blood back out to your limbs, to your muscles. And so there's a bit of a flushing effect there. And so I think that's probably why the ice baths seem to help with that. There was one other thing that I was going to mention. I just happened to look this up because we talked about this, in our chat about just kind of weird alternative things. We've been talking about grounding and earthing as of recently, like the idea of actually getting out and touching your feet or your bare skin to the ground because of the negative charge that actually is then put into your body, the electrodes that go into your body. And there was a study done on grounding and delayed onset muscle soreness. And they tested eight different, I think it was guys, college age guys. And they basically, I think, did calf raises, like just a brutal amount of calf raises to make sure that they got sore. And they tested their blood, they tested, subjective values and things like that as well. And they showed that simply grounding, they did it with the electrode pads just attached into a grounded outlet, that it did significantly reduce the soreness. And based on all the stuff that I've read about grounding as of recently, one reason why they think it helps so much with inflammation is because when your body experiences those tears, those micro tears, you've got these free radicals coming in and kind of ravaging the system. And these electrons, basically, once that inflammatory process happens, these free radicals do their job. They end up like tearing up other good tissue. When you are grounded, it sends in this electrical charge, which basically satisfies these free radicals so they don't start tearing up the tissue around it. The way they described free radicals is they're like security dogs that, they keep an eye on the junkyard, and they take down the burglars that are showing up. But then once they do that job, then they turn on their owner and they start attacking their owner. Right. So these electrons come in and they basically appease the dogs. They appease the free radicals. Radicals, good word there.
Yeah. See, so you always hear about antioxidants, right? Like this food's really high in antioxidants, and that's kind of the same thing, right? I can see with the free radicals, and then like neutralizes them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a similar concept. I don't know all the chemistry and physiology behind that as far as the nutrition versus the electrical charges and how that, those two oppose or complement each other. But yeah, I mean, we all have heard about, the fact that antioxidants are one of the keys to reducing that oxidation, which is kind of a free radical process, from what I
Okay.
understand.
Gotcha. So I wonder, like the only time I've ever really had like the DOMS, it's always been when I started a new leg workout. Is it? And I've talked to so many people about it too. And like, oh yeah, it's never the next day. It's 2 days later that your legs, you can't even walk and you can't even sit down on the toilet because your ass is so sore. Is it just because the muscles are so much bigger in those areas?
Um, I think so. I think it's because there is more muscle tissue there to be, kind of torn up, for lack of a better word. And then I think the reason that it's 2 days later is because it's that whole it takes time for that inflammation to occur at that cellular level, so you don't end up feeling that pressure. So one of the articles I read, in fact, I can I can put this article in the chat here in a second. But they were talking about, possible reasons why it occurs is that inflammation, that swelling, it swells up so much that it then is putting pressure on like the pain sensors or the nerve endings. And that's why, it takes some time for it to basically fill up, for lack of a better term, fill up and then start causing that pressure. And so that's why we get it a couple of days later. Yeah, I would imagine just because of the size of the muscles, it's a much bigger inflammatory effect than, I mean, we've all done it where it's our chest or our biceps or our triceps or shoulders or whatever. But yeah, the legs and glutes and quads seem to get hit way harder. And maybe it's also because, we're typically imposing a bigger resistance on those as well. So those muscle fibers are withstanding a greater force, and so they're maybe incurring more damage.
Yeah, makes sense to me. All right. Okay, so I've got a bunch of questions here in the queue. Yeah, guys, if you have a question on the live call here, just type it in the chat box. Yeah, as soon as Brandon put in his question, you answered it like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the active recovery. Bingo.
Gotcha. Here, let me throw this in the chat here. I just searched Poliquin, which you'll see here, Poliquin. I searched Poliquin and DOMS, just because I knew that they would have a couple good articles on that. Charles Poliquin is now I think he passed away a year or two ago, but very well-known strength coach. And then the Poliquin group, they just do a lot of good research and always have good information.
Gotcha. All right, so shifting gears. So what are the best exercises to increase speed? And then what rep range do you think is ample as well?
So power exercises are going to be big here. Power is basically trying to move a decent amount of resistance at a very fast speed. So, but you have to program that pretty specifically and you have to have somebody that has a little bit of a training background there too. So if we were doing some squats, or some deadlifts, or this is where like Olympic lifting can be very effective for increasing speed. I am definitely not an Olympic lifting coach, so I don't employ Olympic lifting techniques or tactics into my training programs just because I don't have the experience. But so some speed related things would be, even just doing like a relatively heavier deadlift with a fast, up movement. And then you can kind of let the bar almost drop to the floor where you're not worried so much about what we would call the eccentric control, the lowering with control. Or like in a squat, it'd be like really emphasizing the up portion of the squat, not going, typically we do kind of a 3-second descent in most of our programs. So we wouldn't be so worried about going down slow where you're really controlling the weight. We'd be worried more about the explosion on the way up. Then any kind of like bounding drills, jumping drills, so like plyometric type of stuff. So maybe box jumps, kind of that lateral, like jumping from side to side on one foot. But when doing plyometrics like that, you want to be careful that you're not, how did somebody phrase it? Like that you're not just using jumping exercises as a cardio exercise. So when I see somebody doing 20 box jumps in a row, or hopping on a box, hopping off, hopping on a box, hopping off, they're typically doing it with the intention of building speed and power. But when you're doing that for a speed and power drill, it should be boom, and then it should be shut it down. So like if doing a box jump, it should be jump up on the box, step off the box, give yourself a few seconds, jump up on the box, step off. It shouldn't be this back and forth for a couple of reasons. You're going to fatigue yourself. And we always talk about how you can't get faster and more explosive when you're tired. But also when you do that, that's when you start to break down in your form. You start to break down in the efficiency of your body movements, and you can likely cause injury too. So for instance, I have an 18-year-old golfer that just started with me last week. We're going to start employing some speed related training, some plyometrics and explosive kind of things. First, I took him through an evaluation just to look at how he's moving. And he had some things that we need to work on mobility wise. We're going to start tackling some of that. I'm going to take him through a very standard strength training program, some basic dumbbell squats, split squats, some presses, push-ups, pull-ups, those kinds of things. And then once we go through a bit of a phase there where I see him getting a little bit of an understanding of his body movements and making sure that he's controlled and stable, then we'll go into doing some of those plyometric type of drills, maybe even some med ball throws. Med ball throws are great because they really help with your sequencing. But the way that we'll do that is more towards the beginning of when he comes and sees me. Let's say he's coming in twice a week. We'll do that towards the beginning of his workout. We'll get him loosened up. We'll warm up a little bit. Then we'll do some plyometric type stuff. Maybe some box jumps, maybe some just like bounding, like jump once and kind of land, then jump again and kind of land, because he's going to be fresh at the beginning of his workout. And we'll just do a little bit of that. And then we'll go into his strength training routine to continue to build the strength that we're wanting to do. Hopefully that answered what we're looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know what? A couple of years ago, I didn't realize this, like those Olympic lifters have like crazy vertical leaps because they're so explosive. Their legs are, shut up, dog. Yeah. Because you wouldn't think about like a guy that size, or even a girl that size, just being able to jump out of the gym like that. But it does make perfect sense the way you're describing it.
Yeah. And for anybody that hasn't seen like a power lifter or somebody that trains explosively like that, when they're training, like the amount of rest time in between their sets could be 5 minutes, 6 minutes, like they might do 2 or 3 reps or 1 rep and then go sit down and chill out for 5 minutes again, because they know that, especially like, if you watch any of the Olympic lifting in the Olympics this past year, like if they're going for those kind of records or those kind of weights, it takes everything out of them to do that 1 rep. And so when you see somebody fail on their first lift in the Olympics, it's not often that they're going to then get that weight on the next try, because think of how much you've exerted, how much gas is already out of your tank. And now you're trying to lift, maybe a record for yourself on the second try. And that's where, even doing the super speed clubs, I like to tell my guys and girls to, like take a little bit of break in between so you can kind of rest and get a little bit of that energy back before you go into your next set where you're trying to beat your last speed. Because you'll see it if you're doing 5 swings on the super speed clubs. Typically you'll see, you'll hit your max, and then you'll see the next couple swings. You think you're swinging as fast as you can, but you'll see that number start to decrease a little bit if you don't give yourself enough rest.
Oh yeah, good God. I mean, I've done those like outside when it's hot out, and I'm like dripping with sweat when you go through the whole overspeed routine.
Yeah, so that, if you do it, if you don't take your rest, it can almost turn into a cardio thing. And if you're not doing it with a little monitor to see how fast you're swinging, I would venture to say that most people by the end are swinging, depending on how much they do, they can be swinging slower at the end, which is the opposite effect that you want. You want your last swings to be your fastest swings. But if you're just doing it all in a row and you're huffing and puffing, you're breathing out of control by the end, and you feel like you just ran sprints, you're not able to check how fast you're swinging, odds are you're probably swinging slower. And so you're almost doing yourself a little bit of a disservice that way. You're building up endurance, which can be beneficial. But if your intent is really to build speed, then we need to make sure that speed is the number one priority there. Yeah.
So I guess the big takeaway is like the speed training comes at the beginning of practice. The endurance stamina comes at the end of practice, like sprints at the end of soccer, basketball, whatever practice. That's more for fitness rather than speed.
Correct. So we've started doing that even with my son's team. Like I just told the coach, like, hey, let me just have them run some quick sprints at the beginning, not to tire them out, like 10-yard sprints, 20-yard sprints, and then let them take their time to walk back and chill out. And then, okay, we're just working on boom, explosive movements just to get these kids, feeling that speed, and then give them plenty of time to relax and refresh. Whereas at the end, like the other night, we had them running some hills. At the end, it was just more like up and down, because we were just trying to kind of get their legs under them and build a little endurance.
Nice. I always hated doing hills at the end of practice. What a jerk.
So Brandon just asked, so doing the super speed protocol after lifting or cardio is probably not a good idea. Correct. It is. You should always do it either before your workouts or your cardio, or give yourself plenty of time in between. So I would say, an hour, even 2 hours, depending on what your workout looks like, depending on what your cardio looks like. I like to, the way that we break out a lot of our programs, we've got the 3 lift days, and then we've got the 2 mobility days, or the move days. I like to do the super speed with the move days. Because those move workouts, those don't really take that long, 15, 20 minutes, and there's not really much resistance. I look at those as almost kind of a dynamic warm up, almost a mobility routine. So you're okay doing it after those, because I think your body's going to be nice and fresh, and it's not going to be super tired or overrun. But you could even split that up on those days too. But it's good to do them on the off days or before your sessions, or if it's just kind of a mobility dynamic movement routine, you can do it after that.
Gotcha.
I have to chime in because I've been doing this wrong my entire life.
Well, you obviously
obviously
haven't listened to the 18 Strong podcast when we talked about that stuff.
I know, right? I gotta catch up on too many episodes, right?
That's right.
So
that's right. There's a lot.
Yeah, that's funny. I typically do it. I have been doing it like after workouts, but it's usually on a cardio day, so not like a heavy lift day. So
which is a little bit better, but I would still imagine that your body's going to be more tired and drained. And then if you're doing it afterwards, you're probably leaving some in the tank, which I saw that 7-iron that you hit on the morning drive a couple of years ago. So,
you're
doing okay distance wise, but,
right.
But yeah, I mean, seriously, to go in as fresh as possible, just nice and loosened up and warmed up, but then going as fresh as possible is the way to go.
Yeah, I'll make that adjustment. It's almost like do a little warm up, get the body moving, just like you're at the golf course in the driving range, and then let it rip and then go back in and do your workout. That's smart. So,
yep. Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So, moving along. So are there any YouTube yoga programs you would recommend to someone who is older and needs some more flexibility?
Excuse me. YouTube yoga programs. I can't say that I'm that familiar with many YouTube yoga programs. I do know a couple people in the golf world that are yoga specialists. Let's see, Catherine Roberts is kind of the godmother of all golf yoga,
yeah.
right?
Nice lady too. She's cool.
Yeah, she's awesome. So you can't go wrong with, I think it's Yoga for Golf. I should know. Yeah, Yoga for Golf, Catherine Roberts.
I think it is her.
She's got really great programs. Who the golf yogi, Mark. Sorry, let me pull him up real quick. Really good dude. And he brings in a lot of yoga into his training. Mark Williamson, he's in Scottsdale. I'm not sure if he has online programs or not. And then so I learned a lot of the stuff that we use for our daily motion routine, our as we're now calling the EFD routine. I learned a lot of that stuff. Just the controlled articular rotations, as we call them, are from Dr. Andrea Spina from the FRC system, or what is it? Functional anatomy seminars. They also have a program called KinStretch, KINSTRETCH. And you might be able to find some of those even in your own town. But KinStretch is kind of like it's almost like yoga, but it's even better. It's end range mobility training. And I know that they've got, I don't know if they have online courses, or you can probably find some on YouTube. But that's really powerful, because it's not just putting you in a position and making you hold that position or stay in kind of that stretch position. It's actually what we talk about all the time. It's building up your mobility, building the strength into these different positions. So your muscles actually have to hold and control that end range position. Who's our friend down in Texas? She does a lot of it as well. Man, my brain just isn't working on names today.
It happens.
Pam Owens. She does a great job too. She works with a ton of golfers out of a country club down in, I think she's in Dallas, maybe. So those would be kind of my suggestions of people that we actually know firsthand, rather than just sending you to YouTube and looking up yoga for golf or yoga in golf. Yoga. If you look up yoga for golf, you might come across Catherine Roberts and find some good videos.
Yeah, you'll probably find 10 million of them also. So
yeah,
it's good to have a name. Yep, I didn't know the answer to that even a little bit. Yeah. Okay, so the next one, kind of a breakdown for your workouts. So what percentage of workouts should be strength, stretching, and or cardio?
Well, cardio wise, that kind of depends on what you're looking to do. As being a golfer, it doesn't have to be much, right? I mean, there's not a whole lot of cardio endurance that's needed for playing golf. Now, I'm a big believer that we should all do some sort of kind of high intensity exercise to build some of that vascular strength, the cardiovascular strength, just for overall general health. I also believe that, going for long walks on a regular basis are very good for your health, both mentally and physically. But as far as need wise for a golfer, they're on the lower end of the totem pole. As far as strength, what was the other one? Strength and flexibility.
Stretching,
Basically.
stretching and or cardio.
Cardio.
Those are not even closely related.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, strength wise, that's where we lean the heaviest, because I feel like you can get a lot of your mobility and kind of stretching through doing your exercises properly. So every time we put together a program, any of the programs that we have, they're always meant to go through that full range of motion. And when you do that with control and with some weight, in a controlled fashion with a good posture, you're going to be working on that mobility. You're going to be working on your flexibility, if you will. So that's why we think that, most bang for your buck is doing the strengthening exercises. Now, there's always going to be some other little issues that you're working on. For instance, with this young high school golfer that I'm getting ready to work on, he had some hip internal rotation issues. He had, some thoracic issues where he's not rotating very well. So yeah, I'm going to throw in some specific exercises that are going to be geared towards getting him a little bit more mobile there. And so typically I'll put those towards the end of his workouts. And then I have him doing the daily motion routine every single day. And then I'll give him a couple pieces of homework that are just geared towards those specific things that we're working on to fix mobility wise. But I don't have him just doing, just a routine scheduled stretching session like for his hamstrings and quads and things like that. I really look at where did we find a bit of an issue? How can we work on tackling that? And the rest is going to be mostly taken care of with the way that we then program his training exercises. So he's going to be doing squats and split squats and all those things, but we're also going to be throwing in some rotation, some different angles. As he's in here, as I'm working with him, I'm always kind of watching to see, are there any other issues that we find balance wise, rotation wise, motion wise? But we lean towards, I'd just be totally making up numbers if I gave percentages, but we definitely lean way heavier on the strength side with that in the back of our heads, that is also going to be tackling a lot of just general flexibility, mobility issues. But then if we see that there are other significant problems, specific areas, we'll target those and either somehow build them in through those workouts or throw them on at the end of that training program, or just say, hey, here's some homework that I want you to do 2, 3, 4 times a week. And then always do your EFDs, your daily motion EFDs.
Yeah, I'm kind of envisioning like a pyramid where the bottom, the biggest portion is like strength, and then you kind of, for lack of a better word, specialize a little bit as you go up the pyramid.
Yeah. And because we've talked about that, like visually, what does that look like? And it's like, where does the daily motion go there? I don't know if that's almost even the bottom layer where like, we just have everybody do that. But then the strengthening piece comes in, then some more specific stuff, mobility wise, then maybe if you're really working on speed, then that's going to be kind of on top of that, a little more towards the tip of the triangle. That basic layer for most people is going to look like just general preparation, general physical training. Then you start to specialize a little bit more on, either the issues that they have or the sports performance that they're looking for, or if it's, if that becomes this person's looking to gain muscle or this person's looking to lose fat, it all kind of depends on what that goal is. I picture the end goal kind of being at the top, right? Like the specific thing that they're working on, that's going to be at the top. And that's where you're kind of funneling into those more specifics when you're training that.
Yep. All right. So this is the last question I've got on our list here. So if you guys, again, if you're on the call and you have a question, just type it in the chat box and we'll get to it. Trying to get to the end of the hour. So this is the first exercises. What are the first exercises a beginner must do to improve and to prevent future injuries?
Just first couple?
Just the first exercises. Just name a couple. Move. I'd say, is that an exercise?
Yeah, I'd say the EFDs, the daily motions. Just starting there, getting basically your body gets injured when it takes on a stress that it can't handle. One of the reasons that our bodies will get into these sticky situations is that a certain part of your body isn't moving well. And so another area starts to compensate, or you try to do something that your body wasn't ready to do. So for lack of a better example, when in our daily motion drills, we do, the shoulder circles, right? And so I always think of reaching, because I do this a lot, reaching back into the back seat of my car to grab something out of my bag. That's a motion that could easily cause someone some major shoulder issues. But the fact that and I'm going to knock on wood to make sure that I don't hurt myself doing this in the near future, because there's always potential for injury, right? But if I'm doing my daily motion drills and I'm doing my shoulder circles every single day, my body is more prepared to do that motion than most people. And so it's not a foreign movement. It's not a movement that those muscles and tendons and joints haven't felt in a long time. But for somebody that doesn't do that, they go to reach back there, not thinking about it. They grab, whatever they're trying to grab, maybe lift up their backpack or lift up their purse or whatever. And all of a sudden it puts stress on a tendon that it's not ready for. And then boom, you have an injury. So doing just those little daily motion routine exercises that we have is working on the shoulders. It's working on the neck. It's working on the trunk, the thoracic area, the hips, the ankles. It's getting you to move all of these things through pretty much their full range of motion. So your body's not caught off guard in most situations. Now there's always an issue. Like 4 weeks ago when I'm running the trail and I step on a rock and I kind of lost my focus. I step on a rock and my ankle rolls sideways. And it was, now every day I do my daily motion and I turn my ankle that way, but the amount of force that I had on me stepping down and then rolling it, my body wasn't ready for that. It hasn't handled that much force that quickly in a long period of time. And so it rolled and it hurt and it swelled up a little bit. And, I had an injury. And so I tried to prepare, but I didn't predict that I was going to roll off the edge of a rock. So a couple of things that I've started to implement, because I know that I am going into a trail race in, a month or so, is even just some little balance exercises where maybe I am doing an exercise on a foam pad where I know it's going to be a little bit off. Now I wouldn't do that for golf because you're not standing on an unstable surface when you're swinging a golf club, but I know that as I'm running, I'm going to hit some unstable surfaces. So in that situation, it does make some sense. But again, long answer to their question. But I would start with simply moving as much of your body as possible. There's thousands and thousands of exercises, so we can't specify just a couple, but getting your body moving and making sure that the different joints, especially the main ones as a golfer, are going to be your neck, your shoulders, your thoracic spine, your hips, and your ankles. Trying to move all of those on a regular basis is going to help prevent a lot of compensations, or at least start working towards those moving better during your golf swing, your round, and just life.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, the daily motion for 7 minutes of work every day is pretty life altering.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So in the chat, from Alex, are there any strengthening exercises for the thoracic area as opposed to the stretching / rotation exercises?
So Alex, do you mean like in a rotation fashion? Do you mean in a certain direction or just kind of in general?
Alex, feel free to unmute yourself if you want. So just to kind of read it again. Are there any strengthening that's me in general, he's saying. Okay.
I mean, the thoracic area is kind of tough because obviously it doesn't move a whole lot, right? You've got some extension, you can flex it and it rotates. Now, where you can build on the extension piece is with a lot of the basically scapular strengthening stuff. So if you're thinking about, if I've got like some bands and I'm doing like some pulls this way, it's mainly working on the muscles that are attached from my spine over to my shoulder blades. But that's going to help strengthen that a little bit. When you're lying, if you're lying on an incline bench and you're doing that same motion with a dumbbell, you're also having to work some of those spinal extensors. So the muscles that like pull your spine up. So that's going to work on a little bit of that. That'll work both lower back and upper back. But any of those posterior shoulder exercises are going to be good for just basically general postural strength when we're talking about the thoracic area. Now, there are also, some different devices. We've got that. It's called the, what's that strap or whatever it is. It's a big yellow strap that that you can loop around one shoulder, kind of wrap it around your body and attach it to a cable. And so you can do some things where you are actually like pulling in against some resistance with that band strapped around you. So you can either pull against it, or you can actually let it pull. You can let it assist you and help pull you into a rotation. So you can do some different things with that, or even just, we talk about anti-rotation exercises and rotation exercises. A lot of those, even with the cable, you're still having to use some of those rotational muscles of the thoracic spine to do that, to do all those motions, to rotate or to prevent rotation. So, but I would say first and foremost, most people don't do a lot of the upper back and scapular strengthening type stuff. So that's probably where I would put some of the focus, or a lot of the focus.
All right. It is 3:01. Our questions are answered, so we're ready to rock. And don't forget, next week Jeff and I are playing hooky. So we won't have the live Q&A call. We are heading to Sweetens Cove with our
Sweetens Cove
for the, I don't know, what are we calling this thing? The 18 strong
invitation, first annual 18 strong invitation.
Sure.
Whatever. Yeah. So we've got somewhere between 24 to 30 guys heading down there. We've got the whole course. And most of us are staying right there near the course. It's going to be pretty awesome. So
yeah, I'm excited. Oh, try and stop us, Brandon, from having fun.
Yep. You should be there.
All right. Very good.
All right,
That's
guys.
all I've got for you.
We'll catch up with you in 2 weeks. Thanks for being here.
Adios.
Adios.